Takže dobré ráno, srdečne vás všetkých pozdravujem. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests. I welcome you all to Bratislava, to Slovakia, especially those who have arrived from abroad. Our distinguished guests from Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland. And Norway. Yeah, Joran wouldn't be happy to miss this beautiful country. You are the champions in the area of innovation, research, and development, but also education. And this is why we are very happy that you could come and to share your experience with us. We want to build knowledge-based economy and knowledge-based society. And your experience can help a lot. So thank you very much for your effort and for your will to share your experience with us here in Bratislava. And now, because the majority of the audience are people living here, the Slovaks allow me to continue in my mother language. Takže ešte raz chcem pozdraviť pánov veľvyslancov zo severských krajín a vyjadriť svoju radosť a vďaku, že experti z Fínska, Švédska, Norska, Dánska prišli do Bratislavy sa podeliť s nami o svoje skúsenosti z inovácií, z prepájania priemyslu a vzdelávacích inštitúcií. Ja sa k tým dôvodom mojej vďaky ešte časom vrátim. Chcem ale na úvod zvýrazniť to, čo dnes hýbe doslova svetom, čo sa nachádza v mysli dnes každej jednej a každého jedného z nás. A síce fakt, že sa stretávame v neobyčajne turbulentnom čase. Mám svoj vek a nepamätám si, že by ten čas bol tak globálne turbulentnejší ako práve teraz. Náhoda tak chcela, že práve dnes európski lídri budú rozhodovať a mali by rozhodnúť o tom, aké systémové opatrenia prijať na prekonanie dopadov svetovej, globálnej, hospodárskej, finančnej krízy. Viete, aká je situácia, aká vládne neistota. Ale chcem veriť, že opatrenia, ktoré európski lídri dnes príjmu, budú účinné a povedú k želanému zvratu. Chcem ale povedať, že veľmi silno si uvedomujem, že skôr alebo neskôr tie problémy prekonáme. Ale rovnako si uvedomujem, že prekonať tieto problémy je iba základný predpoklad toho, aby sme sa mohli pozviechať a ďalej rozvíjať. Ako vravia matematici, zvládnuť problémy dlhovej krízy je podmienkou nevyhnutnou, ale nie postačujúcou. Tak nás učili na matematike. Jedným dychom treba povedať, a vždy som si uvedomoval, že je nesmierne dôležité, aby sme sa v týchto časoch vedeli zodpovedne fiškálne správať, aby sme vedeli šetriť, aby sme vedeli redukovať výdavky, aby sme vedeli skrotiť naše deficity, obrátiť vývoj našej dlhovej služby. To všetko je nesmierne dôležité. Ale nemenej dôležité je popri tom sa správať tak, aby sme udržali hospodársky rast. Alebo aby sme zabránili jeho prepadu. A najlepšie by bolo, keby popri tom sme vedeli prijímať také opatrenia, ktoré budú hospodársky rast dynamizovať. Lebo hospodársky rast sú pracovné príležitosti. A pracovné príležitosti je základný predpoklad toho, aby človek mohol byť pokojní a spokojní. A myslím si, že tu je už iba malilinký krôčik k uvedomeniu si toho, že zrejme jedinou šancou, ako zvládnuť krízu a udržať rast, je zvyšovať konkurencieschopnosť našich ekonomík. Nuž a práve inovácie a podpora vzdelávania patria k najdôležitejším nástrojom na dosiahnutie týchto zámerov. Inovácie, ktoré slovami nedávno zosnulého Steva Jobsa odlišujú lídrov od nasledovníkov, predstavujú vo svojej podstate schopnosť vidieť v zmenách príležitosť a nie hrozbu. Je naozaj veľmi dôležité. I am very sorry, I will repeat my first part of speech. Je teda naozaj veľmi dôležité, či sa v dnešnej situácii budeme len brániť dopadom krízy, alebo ju využijeme ako príležitosť pre naštartovanie novej kvality rastu. Myslím, že z toho, čo už som povedal, celkom jednoznačne vyplýva, že my Slováci by sme sa radi vydali práve tou druhou cestou. Pojať krízu ako šancu, ako príležitosť. Práve preto chceme využiť inovácie a vzdelanie ako akcelerátory, ktoré posilnia konkurencieschopnosť našej krajiny a v konečnom dôsledku zvýšia zamestnanosť občanov Slovenskej republiky. Myslím, že mnohí, ktorí ste v tejto sále, si uvedomujete a pamätáte strastiplnú, ale veľmi zmysluplnú cestu, ktorou sme prešli po páde komunizmu. Alebo na prelome tisícročí. Nechcem hovoriť dlho, tak použijem takú skratku obraznú. Bola to cesta mohutnej reštrukturalizácie. Cesta od výroby tankov k výrobe automobilov. Rád pripomínam ľuďom, že ešte pred 15 rokmi táto krajina bola veľmocou vo výrobe zbrojnej techniky, ale nevyrábala ani jediný osobný automobil. Dnes nevyrábame žiaden kanón, ale vyrábame najviac osobných automobilov na hlavu na svete. Toto bola cesta Slovenska za posledné roky. A nie sú to iba automobily. Je to aj elektrotechnický priemysel, sú to aj strojárenský priemysel, sú to aj ďalšie priemyselné odvetvia. Ale tá cesta bola nielen nesmierne ťažká, ale aj nesmierne zmysluplná. Vďaka reformám, niekedy na prvý pohľad aj bláznivým, vďaka napríklad rovnej dani, vďaka odvážnym zmenám v zákonníku práce, na trhu práce, sa nám podarilo skrotiť nezamestnanosť z 20 na 8%. A ešte v roku 2007 táto krajina mala najrýchlejší hospodársky rast zo všetkých krajín Európskej únie. Ale ja veľmi dobre viem, že to, čo stačilo pred 10 rokmi, dnes nestačí. To, čo nám pomáhalo v predchádzajúcich reformách, dnes je potrebné doplniť práve razantnejšími opatreniami v oblasti vzdelávania, vedy, výskumu, či základného alebo aplikačného, a v oblasti inovácií. Schopnosť inovovať je jedným z najdôležitejších faktorov ekonomickej prosperity nielen firiem, ale celých krajín. Uvedomujeme si to veľmi silno aj v oblasti našej zahraničnej služby, ktorá prešla v poslednom roku, myslím, výraznými zmenami. Vytvorili sme novú koncepciu integrovanej zahraničnej služby. Obchodní radcovia z rezortu hospodárstva prešli pod pôsobnosť rezortu zahraničných vecí, pričom vytvárame novú sieť ekonomických diplomatov. Niekedy to znie nepekne, ale je to fakt, že časy klasickej tzv. Salónnej diplomacie sú prekonané a dnes je nevyhnutné zamerať sa predovšetkým na diplomáciu ekonomickú. Významným predmetom činnosti našich veľvyslanectiev a osobitne obchodných radcov alebo ekonomických diplomatov sa stala podpora exportu, podpora inovácií a prílevu zahraničných investícií. Chystáme významné inovačné fóra aj v Nemecku. Vykonali sme roadshow v Spojených štátoch. Sám som navštívil Akadémiu vied vo Washingtone. A budeme veľmi tlačiť na našich veľvyslancov, aby práve toto bola dominantná činnosť našej zahraničnej služby. Vytváranie pracovných príležitostí na Slovensku je skrátka prioritou číslo 1 rezortu zahraničných vecí. Na podporu podnikateľských aktivít sme v našom rezorte zriadili aj podnikateľské informačné centrum. No a keďže chceme dosiahnuť kvalitné výsledky, rozhodli sme sa priučiť v krajinách Severnej Európy. Teda v krajinách, ktoré sú lídrami v konkurencieschopnosti na svetovom trhu. Ich ekonomiky patria medzi najvýkonnejšie na svete v oblasti inovácií a transferu technológií. Ich spoločnosti sú silnými hráčmi na poli vedy, výskumu a vývoja. Často som o tom hovoril so svojimi kolegami, najmä s Jonasom Storem, s mojim kolegom z Nórska, ale aj s Alexandrom Stubom. Hovoril som o tom vo Fínsku, hovoril som o tom na rôznych európskych fórach, že by sme boli veľmi radi, keby sme mohli v Bratislave usporiadať takéto stretnutie s predstaviteľmi zmienených oblastí zo severských krajín. Boli to práve severské krajiny, ktoré dokázali včas identifikovať a podchytiť hybné faktory globalizácie, rozvoj moderných dopravných a komunikačných technológií a uvoľnenie bariér na pohyb tovaru a služieb. Pre vás vo Fínsku, Švédsku, Dánsku, Nórsku už nie sú súťažnou disciplínou nízke náklady. Vytvárate atraktívne inovačné prostredie pre firmy s vysokou pridanou hodnotou produkcie a služieb. A tým ste presunuli ťažisko súťaže do vedomostnej oblasti a inovácií. Stojíte na špici inovačného rebríčka krajín. Nuž a medzi týmito krajinami, a to je naša ambícia, za ktorú sa nechceme ani hanbiť, ani ju skrývať, by sme časom radi videli aj Slovensko. Tu je teda odpoveď na otázku, prečo sme oslovili práve veľvyslanectva severských krajín so žiadosťou o podporu a spoluprácu. Naším zámerom je využiť vaše skúsenosti a podporu pri vytváraní proinovačnej atmosféry v našej spoločnosti. Veľmi silno si a naliehavo uvedomujem, že potrebujeme omnoho kvalitnejšie vzdelávanie, ale aj aktívnu súčinnosť príslušných inštitúcií, agentúr, ale aj komerčnej sféry vzájomne s inštitúciami, ktoré sa danej téme prednostne venujú a venovať budú. Slovenské podnikateľské, vedecké či výskumné inštitúcie sa musia širšie zapojiť do medzinárodnej spolupráce. K dosiahnutiu týchto cieľov prispievajú, a verím, že prispejú, aj kľúčové projekty pripravené vládou, ako sú Minerva 2, Singapur alebo Fénix. Rezort zahraničných vecí, na pôde ktorého sa dnes stretávame, bude vo všetkých týchto projektoch veľmi aktívny a súčinný. A samozrejme bude prichádzať aj s ďalšími námetmi, ako byť užitočný. Takže ak dovolíte, dámy a páni, s týmito myšlienkami úvodnými som sa chcel s vami podeliť a poďakovať sa všetkým tým, ktorí toto dnešné a azda aj zajtrajšie menej formálne stretnutie pripravili. Viem, že to stálo veľmi veľa úsilia, námahy a o to viac sa chcem poďakovať organizátorom, ale najmä našim zahraničným hosťom. Veľmi si vážim príspevok zastupiteľských úradov vedúcich misií severských krajín, tak Fínska, Švédska, Nórska a Dánska, keďže vždy je medzi rovným jeden rovnejší, tak sa osobitne chcem poďakovať veľvyslancovi Fínska, ktorý je takým špeciálnym sponzorom nášho dnešného stretnutia. No, ale bez ohľadu na mieru participácie tej ktorej krajiny, tej ktorej inštitúcie alebo toho, ktorého jednotlivca by som ešte raz sa vám chcel veľmi pekne poďakovať a chcem vyjadriť presvedčenie, že to, čo dnes počujeme, informácie, o ktoré nás obohatíte, padnú na úrodnú pôdu a že ich na Slovensku dobre zúžitkujeme. Sme jedna rodina, rodina Európskej únie a myslím si, že úspech každej z našich krajín prinesie pridanú hodnotu aj pre Európsku úniu, našu spoločnú domovinu ako takú. Takže veľmi pekne vám ďakujem, že ste nie len prišli, ale ma aj vypočuli. Thank you very much for your attention, and because I am relatively quite busy man, I must leave. Enjoy your stay to Bratislava, and thank you very much for coming once again. Goodbye.
Well, good morning. It is a privilege on my part to be welcoming you to this forum, especially after Minister Dzurinda. My name is Iva Kleinova, and I'm leading the implementation effort of the Minerva Innovation Strategy at the Office of the Plenipotentiary for Knowledge Economy. Mr. Martin Brunsko, who's our plenipotentiary, was supposed to be here. Unfortunately, he couldn't come because he was at the last minute asked to accompany the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister to the EU summit. So he sends his warmest greetings and his sincere apologies. And among us, I think he would much rather be here than at the EU forum right now. But I guess luck is on my side. I have just returned from Abu Dhabi this morning, where there was this workshop with 20 strategic directors from different countries, including Finland, actually. And they were discussing the visions and the strategies of what they want to do with their countries and how they think about the future. And every one of them, in every discussion that we had, talked innovation, 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 entrepreneurship, innovation. After discussing with them and listening to all of them, and all of these people, how innovation was really a core part of how they think about the future, I have to say that today, even after arriving at 6 a.m. from Abu Dhabi, I really feel very, as Hillary Clinton once said, fired up and ready to go. And what better place to do it than at an innovation forum with our colleagues from Scandinavia. The team that I'm working with has been encountering quite a bit of skepticism in what we do here in Slovakia, especially in the public sector. There's a lot of, it's just another strategy. We've seen so many of them already. Oh, keep trying, it won't lead anywhere anyway. Fortunately, our team is very immune to those kinds of voices, and not that we don't listen to them, but we are not discouraged. And our message back is really twofold. Number one, we don't really have a choice. We need to catch up with the rest of the countries. We need to become more competitive. We know the manufacturers, the car manufacturers that Minister Dzurinda talked about, will leave sooner or later, probably sooner than later. We want a future with a high standard of living. we've been failing in innovation for too long. This is the time, and innovation is just unavoidable. But number two, we just don't want to be bored in this country. Competitiveness and standard of living are, very essential and noble goals, obviously, and that's why, in many ways, we do this. However, the set of policies that we want to implement will also make our lives more interesting and fun and engaging. They will create a country that is recognized, cities that will thrive, and companies that we can be proud of. And it will be interesting not just in the obvious fields of innovation, such as life sciences and material sciences, but everywhere, because people will be more willing to and able to discover and develop and improve in all areas of life, in the lab, in the office, in the public sector, and at home. And I'd love to live in that Slovakia. So helping us get there are some very special guests today. And I would like to take this opportunity to really welcome you here in Slovakia, our colleagues from Scandinavia. You are in many ways our great inspiration, and we are very much looking forward to discussing and sharing ideas and learning from you throughout today. And my hope for today is really that this will be a wonderful networking event as much as a learning event, where we can stay in touch and share those ideas that worked and those ideas that didn't work, because as every great innovator and entrepreneur knows, innovation is about great successes, but successes that often come from great failures. So I do believe that it's time to become experimental, and not just in life sciences and material sciences, as I said, or nanotechnology, but also in policy itself. So, and this forum, as I see it, is really just about that. So with that, I think let's get started. Thank you very much. I would like to invite the panelists for the first panel. It's Dr. Christensen, Mr. Turunen, Dr. Lasse B, and there's been a change. Mr. Puya couldn't come, so Mr. Esmail Zadeh will replace him. So please.
Okay, everyone can hear me. So let me introduce our guests for the first forum. They have some very impressive experiences. We have representatives from all 4 countries, Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden. We have 3 high-ranking officials from their respective governments and 1 high-ranking investor from Sweden. Lots of great universities, several PhDs, 1 former naval officer, as far as I know, so watch out. And in the interest of time, I will introduce them very briefly, so we have time for discussions and so on. So we have Dr. Christensen, right here on my left, is the head of the division of the Danish Agency for Science, Technology and Innovation. He's worked at this position at the Danish Ministry of Economic Affairs for the last 14 years, and he's also the head of the Secretary of Danish Council for Technology and Innovation and responsible for innovation at the Danish Ministry of Science, Innovation and Higher Education. I hope that's right. Mr. Ilkka Turunen is from Finland. Since 2010, he's been the Secretary General of the Research and Innovation Policy Council in Finland. The council is responsible for the strategic development and coordination of Finnish science and technology policy, as well as the national innovation system as a whole. We have Dr. Tore Lasse B. who's the Director of Innovation in Norway, and he's been in this position since 2007. And finally, we have Mr. Saeed Ismailzadeh, who is a venture capital investor for the firm Serendipity Innovations in Sweden, and they do mostly mostly work with spin-offs from universities. So I think it should be a very interesting discussion. I will just start very, very briefly and give you some ideas of where we are in Slovakia, and then we'll have 10-minute presentations by each, up to 10-minute presentations, let's say, by each panelist, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. So maybe I'll just say a little bit about what we're encountering in Slovakia right now. We're kind of not in a very good state in terms of innovation. Slovak economy is no longer considered to be innovation-based, starting this year, actually, according to the Global Competitiveness Report. Our capacity for innovation indicator places Slovakia on the 84th position, together with Egypt and Cambodia. When it comes to the availability of key factors necessary for the creation of knowledge economy, Slovakia really lacks significantly behind the OECD, and we have the lowest number of innovative companies in all V4 countries, the Visegrad countries. We see some really great issues, and that's why we did our Minerva, and that's why I come to work every day. There's very low spending on R&D in Slovakia, only 0.47% of GDP, very, very low. Very non-efficient, non-effective mechanisms for finance of science and research. No effective mechanisms for technology transfer, a big problem. The education, science and research, and innovative entrepreneurship approaches have been historically really separated into different places, and there was no kind of coordination between them. So this was a huge problem. They were just dealt with separately. And there was a general lack of political coordination between ministries responsible for different parts of the innovation process, let's say. Our strategy, Minerva, we really tried to focus on all the sectors together, and we tried to be the integrating body, the one that through which different ministries talk to each other, and also the one that tries to implement some of the bridging mechanisms in education, science, research, and innovative entrepreneurship. We have 26 different measures, 19 are very specific, and 7 are kind of more systemic, such as changing the procurement system or things like that. Some of the most important parts of the strategy have been, or we would like to do this, we're in the beginning of the implementation process. We're setting up a national technology transfer system, a really world-class infrastructure for top research. We're going to invest in that. We're setting up an international system for technology incubators, working with other incubators in foreign countries. Innovative R&D funding program, Zubir, which is used in the US. I'm not sure, maybe we can talk whether it's and how it's used in Scandinavia. Some stimuli for industrial R&D and government, and also in terms of the coordination, where we already set up a government innovation council, which will work together to monitor and coordinate. And with what we'd like to get out of today, I think, on our side, is really your experience and your views on how you've dealt with, things like supports of startups, innovative financing, venture capital for R&D and innovative activities, development of connections between companies, research and education institutions, commercialization of research, and political coordination, and any other topics that might arise during the discussions. So now let's start with the wisdom from Scandinavia. Thank you. So Mr. Christensen,
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. I think I would like to see the presentation from Denmark and not from Norway. maybe it's easier for me. I'm supposed to be sitting, okay.
You can stand if you want, it doesn't matter. It's up to you.
This is Finland.
It's a nice one.
Well, but thank you for the invitation. Denmark and Finland and Norway and Sweden are very different countries. And if we take together Iceland, the 5 Nordic countries, then first of all, we have 5 different currencies. So we are only Finland has a euro. Denmark and Sweden have had the referenda with the no vote on the euro. So you should not copy everything we are doing in the Scandinavian countries. And also, if you compare the size of countries, not in terms of population, but in terms of resources and the geography, then we're also very different. Perhaps Denmark and Slovakia are those who are more or less most similar. We are small countries, 5 million, 5.5 million inhabitants. But then we also have the same amount of people in Finland and Norway, but they have a totally different economy. So when you want to reshape your economy and make an innovation strategy, then you are more or less on your own, because you cannot be compared to any other country in the world, and you have your own population, your own tradition, your own history. But what you can learn from us is what we have done and our failures, and maybe you should not repeat our failures, but try to find out what is our successes, and then try to adapt it in the best way to your own traditions and your own society. In Denmark, we had our first innovation strategy in 2006. That was a very big strategy, and some people refer to this as a globalization strategy. This was led by the Danish Prime Minister. He was in charge of a globalization council with representatives from the whole Danish society, and also from the most important ministers in the government. And the government ended up presenting a strategy with 350 initiatives. So 350 actions. And this, of course, should be financed. So this is the most important part of an innovation strategy. It's not only about words, but also about actions and how to finance these actions. The strategy focused on knowledge building, more investments in research and development. It also focused on reform of the university system and also on education. So these were the 3 main elements in the strategy from 2006. In order to finance this strategy, the government presented a bill in the Danish parliament with a welfare reform. So actually, in order to finance the Danish innovation and research strategy, we made a welfare reform where we postponed the age of retirement and reduced the... So we tried to get a long-term sustainable budget, public finances. Of course, this was before the economic crisis. So we also had another welfare reform a couple of years ago in order to finance the Danish research and innovation system, and at the same time having a sustainable public finances. This goes hand in hand. You cannot finance innovation strategy and research if you don't have the money. Today you get the money from welfare reform, cutting public expenditure, or making retirement reforms, as is discussed right now in the euro area. We did this in 2006, and we're not a euro member, so we can have our own pace, so to speak. Of course, we comply with the same budgetary criteria in the euro area, but cannot be penalized as the other countries. So we got a lot of extra money. Actually, we got 30% extra money for research and development investments in the public sector. So the government set up 2 main objectives in 2006. They should be met in 2010, but we already met them in 2009. The first objective was that we should spend 1% of GDP for public research. In 2006, it was 0.7%, but in 2009, it was 1.05%. And we just have got a new government this autumn, and the government is saying that this is a minimum level for public spending on research and innovation activities. Then we also have a goal for the private sector, and this is that the private sector should spend minimum 2% of GDP on private research and development activities. In 2007, this was 1.6%, but in 2009, this was 2.1%. So during the economic crisis, the Danish companies has actually spent much more on research and innovation activities. And why is this? Because at the same time, the Danish innovation strategy has also focused on strengthening the ties between research, universities, and other education bodies and the business. This is a very important element in the Danish strategy to make bridge building between the public research and education institutions and the private business sector. When you talk about we are doing quite well in Denmark, I would say, well, if you take some of the indicators, we are doing excellent, and other indicators, we are in the same situation as Slovakia, where we could compare ourselves to Egypt or Cambodia. It also depends on which indicators you look on. So you should not focus too much on these indicators, because then you will get depressed. If we have an indicator where we are very sad, and this is perhaps a very important indicator, I think, and this is about the productivity growth in the economy. And Denmark has had the lowest productivity growth rate, average rate in Europe since '95. So even though from outside we look as a wealthy country, it was because we used to be wealthy with the high per capita income in top 10 of the world. We are not anymore in this position. And the fact is that we have a low productivity growth rate in the economy. And this is our main concern, and that is also the reason why we are investing more money in research and development and innovation activities. The new government has supplemented the strategy from 2006 with additional goals. And these are very ambitious goals, and this is about we should now make a broad-based innovation strategy and also integrate the education system much more in our innovation strategy. So government has set 3 important goals for education, which is important also for the business, because the Danish problem has been the lack of access to high-skilled workers. Business has simply, we had a couple of years ago, 0 unemployment rate, so we could not could not have enough people in the Danish business, and this of course hampered the innovation process in businesses. But the 3 main goals is first, 25% of the Danish population, of the Danish youth should in 2020 have a higher education, a longer higher education, 25%. That's a very ambitious goal. 60% of the youth generation in 2020 should have a longer education. 60% of the whole youth generation. And 95% of the youth generation should have minimum territory education. So this means that, and actually the government has decided that it should be almost impossible for young people to be unemployed. Unemployment salary for youngsters used to be below 25, but now it's below 30, will be lower than the student grant if you take an education. And this is very important for our innovation strategy. Thank you so much.
Good morning to everyone. Can you put the next slide? Okay, can I use it? Okay, thank you. Yes, this is actually an overview of the performance of national innovation system, and as you can see, Finland belongs to the family. We are always together with the Norway and together with Sweden, Switzerland, and Denmark, the innovation leaders. Now that it's not that important what are the indicators here, just to say that we have done relatively well in recent years, and we already are benchmarking each other when we are eager to look at what they're doing in Denmark, what they're doing in Sweden, and what they do in the Netherlands, and what they do in Singapore. Actually, in recent years, Finland has performed well in various international comparisons. I would like to say very shortly that the success factors include, first of all, the major long-term public and private investment in R&D. Actually, 2009, the Finnish R&D intensity was the second highest only after Israel. 4% of GDP was invested in R&D, and 72% of that was private investment. In concrete figures, that was almost 7 billion euros and 5 billion euros private investment, and that was kind of world record at that time. Of course, we are facing a difficult economic situation, and I can foresee already now some cutbacks in private and in public investment in R&D. Secondly, we have a large number of R&D employers, and also the specialization of economy and companies in knowledge-intensive growth areas. And we also have, what I want to stress, that we have this strong culture of cooperation, public-private partnership, that has been one of our key strengths in the past, and it will be one of our success factors in the future too. We have a world-class school system, and also we have taken into consideration an environmental perspective in decision-making. And whenever asked what is the most important factor in our innovation system, I want to emphasize the role of good, accessible, equity, and basic education. You should start with basic education. Then you can't start at the top, you have to start with the education. And people are whenever there's a question about innovation, it's companies and individuals who make the innovation. That's why it's important to have high quality basic education. And Finland also scores well above EU average in terms of high quality scientific publication, patents, and contribution to knowledge-based economy. And there is a strange Finnish paradox, because if you look only the indicators, Finland always also scores significantly above the EU average concerning almost all business environment indicator categories, and still we don't have that much of small size and medium size companies engaged in R&D activities. And especially the problem is that there is a low volume of high-growth entrepreneurial firms in Finland, and that's one of the major weaknesses. The other major weakness is that our internationalization in science and technology still remains behind a reference group. And the main structural problem regarding internationalization of our R&D system is a weak social dimension of globalization. By that I mean that the low share of foreign experts, researchers, students compared to most Western European countries. The percentage of foreign students in our degree program is below 4%. And in some of the competitors, it's more than 10 and even more than 15%. And that is a major weakness in terms of the social dimension of globalization. And of course, I already mentioned that the number of innovative high-growth enterprises is low, and that is something that we are going to tackle during the next government period, government term of office. And also that our system is very fragmented. We have nowadays 25 universities of applied sciences and 16 universities and 18 public research institutions under 8 ministries. And our major task is to create stronger units and increase the cooperation and collaboration between universities, companies, and public research institutions. Just a quick look. I just want to mention one of the key themes, what we are going to do in the next year and forthcoming years. I would say that the university reform was a major investment in future in Finland, and that increased the autonomy. And that will create also attractive research and education environment in Finland, and that will help also in terms of internationalization of our system. And next step would be reform the budgeting formula to avoid internationalization, high-quality education, high-quality research, and also reform the polytechnic sector. And so I would say that perhaps the most important task for the government and for the stakeholders is really implement the structural development of our system, because they are too tiny, too small units to be internationally competitive. We have a long tradition, a strong tradition and evaluations, but I would say that we do not utilize properly the results of the evaluation. And that's why we are going to streamlining the structure of the support structure. We are going to evaluate the main funding institution, the Academy of Finland, TEGES, and also other instruments that are vital to our innovation system, such as Finvera, which is the funding institution of innovation activities. What we always, when we look at the other Scandinavian countries, we think that the research infrastructures are not in that good condition in comparative sense. And that would be a major investment from the government side to invest more on research infrastructure. We have made the infrastructure roadmap, which is part of a European project. We have identified the key infrastructures, but we haven't been able to implement that yet. And that would be also important to implement that. We also established the graduate school system in 1995, and since then the number of doctorate degrees has doubled, but in the future we have to create a real 10-year track system, research career system. The other teams that are vital in Finland, the pooling resources, use really the existing research information and data what is there in the public sector to exploit the huge resources that has been created by research. We are implementing a broad-based innovation action program, innovation policy action program. We have to also introduce new instruments in order to increase the number of companies engaged in research and innovation. And that's why there is a discussion to introducing tax incentive to companies. There will be reforms in the financing structure. Of course, entrepreneurship is always there. But what perhaps is the most important, that Finland has already reached the productivity frontier. Now we have to do things new way. And that means that this is more experimentation, risk-taking, and pioneering. And that would be, those are the key words in the future in Finland. I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, here. It's Mr. Torlas. Sure.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's always nice to be back in Bratislava. This is the third time, in fact, in the last 6 months. Slovakia and Norway are renewing and establishing new cooperation in the terms of the EEA and Norway grants financial mechanisms. And I would like to share with you some of these experiences. I will give you a short introduction to Innovation Norway. I will go into the green industry innovation in the context of European Economic Area financial mechanisms, and also give some good examples of the plans that we have in the future. And I would like to underline that we have an excellent cooperation with the Office of the Slovak government, and we continue our negotiations tomorrow. This is my director, President. Innovation Norway support businesses that create tomorrow's business life. Innovation Norway contributes to innovation in trade and industry, making businesses competitive, promoting the reputation. Innovation Norway is a public door opener. We are a public institution. after Norwegian terms quite large, 750 employees. We are owned by the Minister of Trade and Industry and the county municipalities. We are quite international organization. We are represented in more than 30 countries, 35 offices abroad, and in all the counties in Norway. This is our special efforts in the energy and environmental sector for the next 4 years to come. We have realized that there are different requirements and different services that we need to provide. We are especially supporting entrepreneurship with special schemes. We have special schemes for SME growth, R&D contracts, and my colleague from Innovation Norway, Ola Rusanes, will go into this in a later panel. We have also a very focus on innovation centers and clusters, and I left some brochures to the left over there if you want to pick up some information later. Now, into what are the EEA and Norway grants financial mechanisms? As you know, Norway is not a member of the EU. Still, we are following more or less 99% of the regulations, and for this we are paying a fee. This fee is called the European Economic Area and Norway grants financial mechanisms. We are contributing together with Liechtenstein and Iceland to this financial mechanism, but Norway pays 97% of the money. So this means that we have a majority vote when it comes to how to use this important grant. Altogether, this grant for the next period to come, which is called 2009 to 2014, is approximately 1.8 billion euros. And as Norway has a very open economy, it's not only to give away a lot of grants, this is in our own interest. We are very much dependent on the trade cooperation with the European market. And you see Norway is one of Europe's or EU's major trade partners. After the huge countries like China, India, and the United States, I think we are number 4 as a trade partner to the European Union. From this small scale, you might see that our export is far bigger than the import for the time being. What will the grants be used for in the next period? We are now negotiating with all the receiving countries. We are calling them the beneficiary states. All the 12 new member states of the EU will receive grants through this mechanism. And we are now negotiating with the Slovak government how to distribute the funds for the next period. In the last period, ending in 2009, but the projects are still continuing into 2011, we distributed 1.3 billion euros to the countries of the 15 beneficiary states. For some reason, Portugal, Spain, and Greece are still receiving some of the grants. But the major part are going for the 12 new member states, including Slovakia. These are the funds for the next period, and there is some overall objectives, which is reducing economic and social disparities, and, as important, to strengthen the bilateral relations between the donor states and the receiving states. These are the distribution of the funds, just for your information. So you can see that Slovakia will receive 80 million euros, and the period of receiving the grants will start in 2012, and the projects receiving the grants should end up in 2016. So we have a lot of job to do together with the government to see that these grants are going to bilateral relations and to strengthen the social and economic development. These are the priority sectors, and I have highlighted green industry innovation and promotion of decent work and tripartite dialogue in red. These are the areas that is very important for Innovation Norway, and these are the special areas that we are contributing into the collaboration with the government in Slovakia. This is very small. Sorry? Oh, is it over 10 minutes? These are the distribution of the funds. I don't want to go into this, but we have already decided together with Slovakia with the distribution of the funds. Green industry innovation is the most important project seen from our perspective. And the whole idea that projects to be funded the point of departure, the approach to support projects which are both good for business and good for the environment. I think I have to stop because the moderator is saying I already passed the time. So thank you very much. And if you want to have more information about this, I also left some brochures, as I said, and it's very easy to go into the web pages to study these mechanisms. And I think they might be very interesting seen from a Slovak point of view, because this 80 million euros is not yet spent. They are not yet distributed. So it's a good chance to come into the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will give a short overview of more of a practitioner's point of view rather than we are not policymakers or legislators, so we are in the work of trying to build new ventures and new companies. I think that there are some issues that during our process of working during almost now about 10 years in this field, we have experienced in Sweden mainly. But I have participated many of these type of conferences, and there is one issue that I would like to point out, and that is that there is usually lots of focus on the input parameters. We saw that Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Israel, Singapore, they are all ranked like very top in the world when it comes to being very innovative and so on. But most of these listings are made on the input parameters, how much we spend on R&D and how many universities we have and so on, and very little effort on the output parameters, which is actually much more important. It would be crazy for a company to measure its performance or how innovative they are in terms of how big their cost of R&D is. It's much more interesting to see how many new products that they form. So, for example, in Sweden, Sweden is one of the top 3 in the world when it comes to rankings of investments in R&D. Between 3 and I think 3.5% of the GDP or something like that, together with Finland and Israel. And the outcome in terms of the knowledge creation is huge. So I think we are about top 3 in the world also when it comes to the number of scientific publications, number of patents, and so on. Per capita. But Sweden is at the same time, it's a very, it doesn't have the traditions of being very entrepreneurial country. So when it comes to the rankings of how many people that are involved in entrepreneurial activities, it's very low. And I think that the 4 countries represented here, I would guess that Sweden and Finland is very similar in many of these parameters. I believe that my experience is that Denmark and Norway is a little bit different. Norway is the sheikhs of Scandinavia with all the oil and it's a different type of economy, a little bit of willing of taking more risk and so on. So I read the study. It was for example, I mean Sweden has lots of big international industries like ABB and Sandvik and Volvo and so on. But the average, if you see the average founding year of the Swedish industries, large cap industries in Sweden, it's about 1916. So it's about 100 years ago that they were founded. And for the last 50 years, we have had, I think, 1 or 2 companies that were created, while in some regions in the world, like Silicon Valley or Boston area, they managed to create the biggest firm enterprise every 5 years or every 10 years, and they do it very systematically. And I mean, if you see California, it's about the same size in terms of population, and so I think it would be much more interesting to focus on the outcomes and more of the entrepreneurial activities. I have been in Slovakia now for a few times. With I have had very good experience in being in Slovakia, and I have felt that there is a very strong it's a very strong will of creating new companies and new enterprises, and that will is, I think, much more important. It will take time to build university infrastructure and everything, but in a world that we are living today, where the knowledge is it's diffusing over the country borders, I think the will is much more important in that term. There is much more important also when it comes to the soft values and the soft structures. Of course, I mean, there is needed the finances for R&D. We will need the finances for innovations and so on. But I don't think that has been the success factor for example, Silicon Valley. It hasn't been that the government has decided to do things in some way. It's more of the mentality of the people that are living there. So it's much more important in terms of, as a policymaker, to focus, I think, on how can we change attitudes. I can give you an example that in Sweden, the universities, the government, everyone is promoting researchers to be involved in commercial activities and commercialization of research and innovations. And that is looked upon very positive. But it's not so positive suddenly if the researcher is making lots of money out of it. Then there are lots of people that feels, well, it's you know, he's making money out of the government finances and things like that. So it's much more about the attitudes of how we see upon these kind of structures. So I hope there will be possibility to discuss more of these soft values. Thank you.
Hello? Yes. Well, thank you so much to all for panelists and for our last speaker to only take up 5 minutes, so we have more time for discussion. If it's okay with Mr. Bichan and the other organizers, can we take a little bit more time and go a little bit over time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes over time? What I find really interesting, I'll start with the last comments. You know, that Silicon Valley has been really systematic in creating new companies every once in a while and so on, and it's been, I think, the experience of a lot of countries that it's very hard to replicate that experience. And my question to all of you, and then I'll open the floor to everyone else, is how can we be innovative both in the private sector and in policy in creating these ecosystems in a different way maybe than just replicating Silicon Valley? How can we change attitudes? Just how can we innovate in policy and the innovation path in general? So who would like to start? Yes.
Thank you. Well, if you want to innovate and change things, you should know what is the problem you would like to solve. And I think we have some of the similar problems in the Nordic countries. For instance, when I heard that you in Finland are talking about you have too many universities, you have too many research institutions. We had the same problem in Denmark for 3 or 4 years ago. And then it was decided to merge universities and research institutions. The overall objective was to reduce the number to only a handful. We had 12 universities and 15 or 16 research institutions in 2006. But after a voluntary process, we ended up with 8 universities and 3 public research institutions. So this was, you can say, this is an innovation in policies. We want to make the system more streamlined, not to have too many actors. And the same holds true with respect to cluster and network organizations. We made a mapping of the Danish cluster network system 3 years ago. We had 160 clusters and innovative networks spread all around Denmark. Was more or less that if you found a very big street in Copenhagen, you could find 3 or 4 clusters. Of course, this is ridiculous. So instead of having 20 clusters in food and 40 clusters in ICT, then we need to have fewer actors. And this is also reforming of the system or innovation of the system. But the main objective is, of course, to benefit companies, their demand for workers and their demand for knowledge. But to make it easier for companies to find the right knowledge in the public system. And that is the big challenge still.
I just want to add one comment, because I think in all the Nordic countries we have this good basis for developing good innovative ecosystem, because there is a cooperation between public and private sector, and we already have the systemic approach to innovation system, and we already know the idea that there should be a knowledge triangle, education, research, innovation. But the question, I think that's in many Nordic countries, is that we don't have exit strategy. We have a very pragmatic approach. Whenever we see a problem, we want to establish a new instrument, but we are not eager to give up of the existing systems, and that is something what we have to learn. Take more risk and really start to think about the pioneering way, because innovation as also the entrepreneurship, they are state of mind. We have to count more on that instead of creating system and structures.
Sorry. Innovation, or the driving force in innovation, is not the government decisions, I would like to say. As a comment to my colleague from Sweden, when Norway is called a shake state or something, I can just mention that one of the new oil and gas fields are not just to pump up something which is very easily available. Let's take the Stockman field in the Barents Sea. The investments before any gas can be distributed is approximately 15 billion euros. And those innovative solutions in those very demanding climate conditions are not coming from any government decisions, it's coming from the industry needs. So this is why Innovation Norway is very much focusing on the collaboration with the users, with our customers, more really than with the government entities.
Yeah, I think that I believe in the power of many. So if you go to, if you are in Northern California and you take a cab or wherever, you know, if you sit in the taxi driver will give you a pitch of how he's going to make a revolution in the world and build the next Google. And it's the mentality of everyone wants to do it. And when everyone wants to do it, you know, some will succeed and lots of people will not succeed. But there are lots of research and our own experience also show that entrepreneurship is very, very addictive. So when you do it once, it doesn't matter if you're successful or not. If you don't succeed, you will start over with something else again and again and again until you succeed somehow. So I think the power of many and having a way of, you know, having low thresholds for people to start some businesses and trying out some things, that is very important.
So if I recap the discussion, I think the role of government is more of setting rules and setting up the system, but then letting the innovators really take on and start doing their own thing and or experiment in many ways. Well, I would like to open I have some more questions, but I would like to open the floor to, the discussion to the floor. Do we have microphones on the sides? Yes. So, please, go ahead.
Just while we're waiting for the first question, I think one of, if we want to make more innovative companies, of course it's very important that we know which type of companies do we have. And if we compare Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Norway, for instance, then in Denmark we do not have the same large companies, big, large companies as you have in Sweden and Finland especially. And this means that and the large companies we have, they can do on their own. They do not need government support. Of course, they need access to high-skilled workers, but the big Danish companies, they have 99% of their turnaround comes from abroad, and 1% is from Denmark. So Denmark is not interesting for the big Danish companies, of course. It's interesting to get public funding. So what we should do is to focus on the small companies, those who could develop, not necessarily entrepreneurs, but those who would like to be innovative. And here, the government can do a lot of harm if we do not do things the right way. And I think in Denmark, 5% of our R&D and innovation money comes from the European Union. 95% comes from our own sources. This means when we make innovation policy for small enterprises, we do not need to make it very bureaucratic, but when the 5% of the money coming from the European Union cannot be spent on easygoing innovation vouchers for companies, because these are too small money for the small company and too much administration. So you need, if you want to focus on small business, then you need to have your own money and not to adopt the procedures of European Union, because then it will not be fit to the small business.
So you all had time to think about your questions? Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Anton Čižmar. I'm from the Technical University of Košice, eastern part of Slovakia. Each of us mentioned at least a few strategic initiative, either from the government point of view or from the different other levels. My question is, how are the academic people or university people involved in this initiative, if they are?
I can start. Of course, this government program is in Finland the most important strategic paper, but just speaking on behalf of the Research and Innovation Council, which is in Finnish body assisting and advising the whole government. In that body we have representatives from academy, from universities, polytechnics, big companies, small companies, labor market organization and financing bodies such as Tekes and Academy. That works very, very well, but the problem in our case is that what is the implementation? There is no follow-up real, because it's only advisory body. It's up to the universities and companies. We cannot force them to do things.
Well, here we have a different system in Denmark compared to the other countries, because we have a lot of independent funding bodies for research and innovation. I think in my ministry we have 5 independent funding bodies. The governing structure is that the minister appoints people from the universities and from the business and from organizations to these funding bodies. And once they are appointed, they are independent and then get most of the money from the ministry and the government, and they decide the projects who should be supported. And the politicians do not have any influence on these decisions. We will hear more about this later today.
Okay, since I got the microphone. In Norway, it's quite simple on the overall level. We have only 2 major government institutions supporting R&D and innovation. This is the Research Council of Norway, responsible for the research and science development, and Innovation Norway. And we have a very close collaboration. And we are especially into cluster development. And both the Research Council of Norway has established Norwegian centers of expertise regionally. Innovation Norway has established the Norwegian Centers of Excellence, or the other way around. There are 2 centers, and the whole point with those centers of excellence and centers of expertise is that we are bringing academic and industry together in those clusters. And some of these clusters I have described in the brochures which are available.
Yeah, I can just. So our business is we make venture investments, and we are focused mainly on technologies coming from academic environments. And Sweden has a very special legislation, also I think compared to the rest of the Nordic countries. So we call it professor's privilege. So each it's the researcher that is the owner of the intellectual property rights, the patents, not the university. And so we are working with individual research groups, and we are very much focused on, we're not so much focused on the specific technology or the idea or that is coming to us, but more the people behind it. And if it's good, talented problem solvers and researchers, we are pretty sure we can do some good stuff with them.
The typical VC approach. So any other questions? Or else I'll ask mine. Oh, yes.
My name is Robert Edhammer. I'm from the Slovak University of Technology here in Bratislava. I would like to just small comments because there was a mention some policy to change some kind of policy of universities in Denmark, I think. We tried to change the policy inside the Slovakia in 2002. That was a large act, and since that time, the universities are the legal entities, they are self-governing bodies, and so on. Since that time, we tried to manage also the entrepreneurial side of the story. Our university, since 2005, supported to create 40 small companies, innovative companies, out of which 5 we do have a shares in it. So we even managed the sharing of the economic activities. This is only the first steps, of course, but we see that this is possible also in our country, in our legislation framework, which might be probably unique in Central Europe as a whole. Why we do this is we have a lack of income, so we have to take care about the coming back money from the investment and the research activities and the activities in cooperation with industry. And this is the key point. In Slovakia, we feel that there is a lack of public support of this kind of activities, lack of funding, and the second is the lack of long-term commitments from the governmental or the public authorities, especially in legislation and especially in funding. We feel that every few years there is new instruments coming to support, but sometimes the instruments are not starting the operation fully and they are changing in different things. So we look forward to have some solid policy and solid environment and rising the funding. We do have only one grant agency for science, for supporting the science, but we have the structural funds which has a larger amount of funding, but different ways, different approach. So probably if you can comment the public support versus the university income from the business activities? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you to Mr. Redhammer. Maybe I will add to that question, if you can briefly comment, because we have to finish very soon. How have you built coalitions within your government as you were building your strategies? How did you make sure that the opposition and the party that was putting together this strategy work together, and that there's actually coherence as the governments change and so on?
Well, in the Danish case, we had a minority government from 2001 to 2011 this year, and continue with a new parties. But the government makes sure that there's a majority in the parliament, a broad majority, and when we got our innovation strategy in 2006, this was not only the government, but the almost whole parliament who supported the welfare reform and the money for research and development. And this is a strength in our system. But then we had university reform, of course, the same situation as in Slovakia, where we made self-governing independent universities with their own governing board. The idea was to have business people in the governing board of universities to have more interaction between business and research. We have talked much about it, but still 98% of all financing of universities come from the public sector. And a lot of this money are direct money for universities, and not all of them. Some of them come from the research councils, but few money from the business. And I think after 500 years with tradition, we cannot change the tradition for one night.
I think that in Finland, all the parties think that our success factor in future will be also investment in human resources and research and innovation. And there is no major change if the government changes. There are minor changes, such as the role of regional policy, for example. What is the importance of that? But otherwise, there is no big change if there is after elections. But I also wanted to comment your question about the role of the basic funding of universities and funding based on other sources, competitive funding or donations or private investment. In Finland, we have discussed a lot of that, and our thinking now is that at least half of the budget of universities should be solid basic funding from public purse, because in our case, they are already perhaps even too much funding based on competition. Of course, the money can come from the public purse and the different sources, but anyway, there should be solid, continuous funding for universities and added funding from other sources.
Support to R&D and innovation is among the less debated issues in the Norwegian Parliament. I can repeat what my friends from Denmark and Finland said. It's a very broad coalition from the left wing to the right wing. They all want to support more. We all want to put more grants into these schemes. So this is not among the things that are on the debated agenda, really.
I have just a short comment about what you mentioned about one of the reasons why you had the activities in startups. And when it comes to profits from startups, there are very, very few universities in the world that have any kind of profits on their that kind of activities. One of the few is Stanford University, and I met the director of the technology transfer office, Stanford, and he showed me the figures, and this was a few years ago, and Stanford was making around $50 to $60 million on annual basis and income from licenses, and that's 90% of those revenues were from 2 patents, and but he said that so this will never be a big, business or income for the university, but the university gets about $500 million in private donations, and those private donations comes mainly from people that have been involved in these startups and that have become, very wealthy, and they are giving back lots of money to the universities. We don't have the same tradition, at least not in the Nordic countries and I guess around Europe. But so there is a huge value for the country when it comes to new businesses and so on. But the university will. I don't see how the universities will make any money out of this kind of activity. So that must be promoted in other ways. For example, having some kind of for the government to see that if you have this kind of outcome when it comes to startup activities and so on, then you will get more finances to the university. So have incentives like that.
Well, thank you very much for all these comments. The discussion is very interesting, and I'm guilty of running 20 minutes late. So I will have to conclude this panel. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Please give them a round of applause. And I presume there's a break right now.
Thank you very much again to all the panelists. Just short remarks. First of all, Mr. Christensen, our apologies. Unfortunately, your presentation was probably too big to come through our bureaucratic firewall. So we are very sorry, but with your kind permission and kind permission of all the panelists, we will post all the presentations to our webpage, so they will be available. Now, because we are behind the schedule, I ask you kindly to make just a short break of 5 minutes, and we will continue then with the second panel. Thank you very much.
Toto je svietlo a toto je... S týmto sa asi posúdi. S týmto? To je svetlo. Svetlo a s týmto asi... Svetlo a s týmto je asi... Dobre.